Welcome to the We Know Ball podcast, episode 106. Episode 106. College football playoff bracket officially set. NFL playoff spots being clinched. Football is into the mud in the best way possible. Football's kicked off its home stretch, if you will, as we get into the middle parts of December. We had the largest total dollar amount free agency contract in professional sports history in baseball. And we have the NBA down the toilet. We've talked about all those things previously. We've touched on them. We built up to this exact moment. And now we sit here ready to discuss it all in episode 106 of the We Know Ball podcast. Let's get into it.
We Know Ball. First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City! It's over. Time to say it again, Boston. Anything's possible. Banner number 18 has been secured. The Celtics are NBA champions.
I mean, we know that we know ball around here.
Hail, hail, Michigan. They are the champions of college football 2023.
Start the party, Los Angeles! Your Dodgers have won the World Series!
It is a UConn coronation. The Huskies make history. Back-to-back national champions.
Well, we know ball, so.
You heard LeBron. Mahomes. Everyone knows we know ball, right? It's just a matter of if you know ball, because then if you know ball and I know ball, that means we know ball. And that's the name of the show. Welcome to the We Know Ball podcast, everybody. Episode 106. We have a fantastic episode. We have some hot takes. We have a college football playoff bracket set and ready to go. We have NFL scoreboard review and also playoff spots being clinched that we'll talk about once again. Got a lot to discuss, got a lot to go over. Juan Soto, monumental contract. It's a lot, man. It's a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to go over the basketball world first, as we typically do. Then we'll get into some college football, and then we'll get into the NFL. Might be a little bit more of a lengthy episode today, but hopefully you guys bear with me towards the end. Be sure to check us out on social media. My Twitter handle at Ryan Knows Ball. Got over 1,000 followers over there, so I appreciate everybody that's followed in that sense. At We Know Ball Sports, Instagram and TikTok. Check us out on YouTube. The clips from the show, we've talked about it time and time again. You know, if you're a football guy, you go to the YouTube channel, you just click on the football only videos, right? You don't want to hear about basketball. You don't want to hear about baseball. That's fine. YouTube has the clips from the show, which is perfect for those who want to nitpick the type of content that they want to see. So check us out on YouTube. We Know Ball Sports. At We Know Ball Sports, Instagram, TikTok, at Ryan Knows Ball. That's my Twitter handle. This is the We Know Ball podcast, episode 106. We are ready to dive into it. So we start with college hoops. We have kind of that interesting part of the college basketball schedule and calendar where you get into late November into December. You kind of got some cross, I don't know the best way to put it. It's like your cross conference matchups, whether it's in some sort of event or it's just baked into the schedule. You know, you've got, just for an example, like looking at the slate of games for tonight's action, you've got Tennessee in the SEC versus Miami in the ACC. You've got Michigan in the Big Ten versus Arkansas in the SEC. So it's like, it's weird, but then again, like at the bottom, you've got Wisconsin playing Illinois. That's a conference game. So it's a kind of hodgepodge action with the college basketball schedule and slate, but it does end up giving us some pretty formidable matchups You've also got the top prospect of the 2025 class, AJ DeBonsa. I could be saying that wrong. I probably am saying that wrong. AJ DeBonsa. He was the number one, and I say was, the number one 2025 prospect, uncommitted, and announced his commitment this morning that he's going to BYU. So very interesting decision from AJ over there, but it's his choice. He's going to BYU. Probably got the most money, but nevertheless, we'll take a look at the standings, or I guess the rankings, if you will. So it's the usual suspects. What we did have in the last week or so of action between episodes was some top teams losing. Teams getting their first loss of the season. And at this point, it looks like almost everybody has logged a loss, or in some cases, multiple losses, many multiple of losses. Interestingly enough, again, you've got, the regular AP poll rankings, if you will, the AP coaches poll versus the BPI. And the AP poll, as of most recently, has Tennessee at number 1, Auburn 2, Iowa State 3, Duke number 4. And then, like I mentioned it, but for reference, Houston is all the way down at number 15 because their record is 5-3. However, in the college basketball power index, they have the highest BPI at 22.7. So which one is it? How do we determine the difference? How do we know if they're actually good or if the BPI is complete BS? I don't know how we determine that, but the number 2 team in terms of BPI is Tennessee. So there's some merit to it. I think the AP is just as valuable and just as important as the BPI. I think they can both be kind of compared and held hand in hand. But the top teams in terms of BPI, because that ultimately is kind of the deciding factor for the bracket makers, the people in charge of assigning the at-large bids when it comes time for March Madness. Houston's 1, Tennessee 2, Duke 3, Auburn 4, Gonzaga 5, Alabama 6, Iowa State. The same usual suspects. UConn, with their 3 losses, is still up there in the top 10 in terms of BPI. In terms of the AP top 25, they're all the way down to 18, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. We kind of went on our Dan Hurley diatribe last episode, but that's kind of the world of college basketball right now. Again, DeBonsa commits to BYU. And yeah, that's kind of it for now. And also, yeah, just keep an eye on some bigger games, and then conference play is going to start in college basketball. So keep an eye for that. Similarly, in terms of basketball, we transition from, of course, college to the NBA. So NBA, you got, I don't want to say meaningless games, but they are meaningless games. You've got the NBA Cup with the Bucks and Magic, the Knicks and Hawks on the Eastern Conference side. You've got the Thunder and the Mavs, and then the Rockets versus the Warriors on the Western Conference side. The NBA Cup, of course, is the in-season tournament that the NBA needed to artificially create out of thin air in order to incentivize their teams and players to actually try in the regular season. And I've seen a lot of stuff this year about the NBA, the ratings being down, the popularity being down, the criticisms of the league as a whole. And a lot of people are taking the roots back to Steph Curry, Golden State, the style of basketball that they play. It's typically boiling down to Steph Curry and the way he played basketball, continues to play, but it's specifically in the big stretch run of 5 or 6 years there where Golden State dominated the NBA. And I can say this. If you blame Steph Curry and Golden State for the ultimate demise of the NBA or the heavy decline of ratings, then you don't know ball, because it's not Steph Curry's fault that everybody jacks threes and nobody defensive or offensive rebounds or shoots any ball inside the 3-point line besides big men. It's not Steph Curry's fault. It's everyone else's fault for trying to emulate the style of play and the caliber of game that is impossible to replicate because of Steph Curry's incredible shooting ability. It's the rest of the league's fault for trying to duplicate a process and an outcome that's you can only generate from a guy like Steph Curry, who's one of the all-time greatest shooters. I'd relate the NBA's decline to the MLB's decline and what the MLB went through. The NBA is declining. There's no question about it. But the answer is, or the question is, I guess, how or why, right? The NBA is definitely declining. The answer is, why is it declining? And everyone wants to blame Steph Curry. Everyone wants to blame Golden State, the style of play, the basketball that they decide to execute on a night in and night out basis that led them to a bunch of championships. And it's not Steph Curry's fault. Why? Because Steph Curry was good at it. Steph Curry could do it. That's why it was so successful, because Steph Curry is one of, if not the greatest shooter of the basketball in the history of the National Basketball Association. Other teams and other players trying to replicate that style of play are the ones to actually blame for how we got to where we are now in the NBA, which is, it is now a wreck 3-point shoot around, offensive rebound, not just optional, doesn't exist. Mid-range jumpers have disappeared. Anything inside the paint is only done by big men and big men alone. Drive, go up for the shot, get fouled, or kick it out, shoot a three. That is the entire offensive scheme of every team in the NBA right now. And we got to this point because everybody is trying to copy what the Golden State Warriors did and how it led them to a long run of success, because they had elite shooters in both Steph and Clay, dominant big man like Draymond, and complementary pieces around them that ultimately led to a championship run that will never be replicated again, except everyone's trying to replicate what Golden State did and what made them successful. And in doing so, it's turned the NBA into the worst product imaginable. And I relate it to what happened in Major League Baseball, because Major League Baseball analytics people, similar to what's happening in the NBA with the 3-point shot, Major League Baseball people are like, oh my gosh, the most valuable thing you can do every time you come up to the plate is hit a home run. So why doesn't everybody try to hit a home run? And the second most valuable thing you can do is get on base. So either hit a home run or walk. And if you can't do either, well, strikeouts aren't the end of the world. And in basketball, 3 points is worth more than 2. So how about everybody shoots threes all the time, forever, no matter what? And if you can't make the three, drive and get fouled, because at least that's free throws, and that's better than nothing. But shooting a mid-range jumper at a percentage that's 3 points higher than the 3-point shot is completely worthless. It's the same thing that happened in Major League Baseball. The 3 true outcomes in Major League Baseball, with going up to the plate and expecting from 6 guys on every team, home run, walk, or strikeout, it made the game of baseball slower. It made the game of baseball harder to watch. It made the balls in play fewer and fewer and fewer. And in doing so, it diminished the overall entertainment value and the product that was on the field in Major League Baseball. So what did they do? They implemented rules like limiting or banning the shift on defense. Incentivize guys to put the ball in play a little bit more. They also put in a pitch clock to speed the game up a little bit, which didn't allow guys necessarily to just dig their heels in, take as much time as they wanted between pitches, and just coil up an unleash with home runs. They also limited the amount of pickoffs, or at least the attempts. In doing so, it incentivized or made it easier for guys to steal bases, increased the action. And now in the NBA, it's hard to imagine what exactly they need to do in order to correct what's gone on in the league about the three-pointer becoming not just a focal point, but the only concern for every single team. But the blame for the NBA's decline, the blame for the NBA flying down the toilet and sinking in every single term of rating, the blame for the NBA's massive decline that everybody's noticing does not fall on the origin of how we got here. It doesn't fall on Steph Curry and his incredible ability to play basketball and shoot at the highest level potentially of all time. It's not his fault. He revolutionized the game. He gave people a different perspective on how to be successful. The blame falls on everybody else trying to copy what Steph Curry and Golden State did. Golden State and Steph Curry were the anomaly. It's not a coincidence that up until Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and the roster construction for Golden State, no championship team was built the way they were. And now it's turned into, how can we emulate Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors and shoot as many threes as we possibly can? Now, mathematically and analytically speaking, the three-pointer is more valuable than the two-pointer. And if you can refine your three-point shooting, then ultimately that's more valuable than going inside the arc and taking a mid-range jumper with a percentage chance to go in about 4% higher. And if you're a big man, get the ball inside the paint, go up. You can't make threes, just go up, just flail, draw a foul. That's an opportunity for 2 free points. And it's the same story that happened in other sports where 1 or 2 people came along, changed the game a little bit, analytical guys got involved, and all of a sudden everybody tries to be the revolutionary following after the anomaly. So I'm not sure in the NBA's case what they're going to do. I don't know how the NBA fixes what's going on, but the league-wide trend is down. Everything. Quality of play, caliber of players, viewership, ratings, attendance, I guess revenue staying pretty steady because of the TV contracts, which are always the largest stream of revenue, but I don't know what the NBA is going to do. I don't know what the NBA is going to do. After Steph Curry and LeBron are out of the NBA, I don't know what that league's going to do. I really don't know what they're going to do in terms of generating viewership and increasing ratings. It's going to take something drastic from the commissioner, because every decision they've made so far ultimately has exacerbated the issues that they're facing, which is the quality of play is down. 3-point shooting is the only thing anybody cares about. Physicality doesn't exist anymore. Rivalries don't exist anymore. The officiating is an absolute joke. The officials think it's about them half the nights. And you got one side of the league, one conference that has more than half the teams under 500. The regular season and the value of a regular season game does not exist because they've even increased the number of teams getting into the postseason. 2/3 of the league makes the playoffs every year. All these different implications with the commissioner ultimately have led to the league's continuous decline. So I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if they need to move the 3-point line back. I don't know if, they need to change the way the games are officiated and make fouls less common. They need to, I really don't know the exact answer. But everything they've tried to implement so far ultimately has continued and perpetuated what's going on, which is a decline in the league's viewership, decline in the product, a decline in the watchability of the league. So I don't know what's going to have to happen. But don't blame Steph Curry. That's my biggest and my main point of this entire diatribe here. It's not Steph Curry's fault that everybody else and every other team is trying to emulate what he did and what Golden State had in their championship run. Because what the Warriors did and what Steph Curry did and continues to do is an anomaly. It's not what should be the goal and the aspirations for everybody. You can't just go out and tell every dude on your team to shoot 40, 50, 60% of their shots from beyond the arc. In regular, traditional, typical basketball, strategically speaking, historically up to this point, there's absolutely no reason why guys like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid would ever spend a moment outside the three-point line. And yet here we are, Jokic in some games takes upwards of 8 to 10 threes a night because he's just got to score 3 instead of 2. And analytically speaking, they've told these guys 3 is worth more than 2. Mathematically speaking, that is correct. But in terms of the overall entertainment value of what's gone on in the NBA, it's leading to the league's demise. It's leading to decline in viewership. Not to mention all the other factors. The officials are horrendous. The officials think it's about them every single night. The giant 6'5" to 7' grown men are flailing around the court trying to draw fouls. There's no physicality. There's no rivalries. There's no intensity. There's no incentive to play well. They've had to artificially create the incentive by making the middle of the season a tournament. And all these things have just continued to turn people off to the NBA. They increased playoff teams, and now 2/3 of the league are playing postseason basketball. You've got one side of the league in one conference where half of the teams in that conference are under 500. You've got another side of the conference where 1, 2, or 3 different teams are probably going to come out on top of that Western Conference and then get in the playoffs as the 1, 2, and 3 seeds and get bounced in the first round. It's just not a great product. And I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if they have to move the three-point line back. I don't know if they have to call fewer and fewer fouls. I don't know. But there has to be a correction in place, especially once these TV contracts start to run dry. Oh, and by the way, the NBA doesn't have great viewership. The product on the court is terrible. The NBA is confused about why are the viewership ratings down when the product on the court is horrendous. The officials make it about them every single night. There is not just a lack of, there's almost no star power in the NBA anymore. And there will be 0 star power when LeBron and Steph are gone. One conference is a complete joke and half the teams are under 500. The other conference has 3 or 4 solid teams that are going to get bounced in the first round despite being the top seeds. And then the icing on the cake is the NBA doesn't let their fans watch some of the best games. The TV deals and contracts and accessibility for viewership is borderline impossible for mid to small market teams. And Adam Silver is just standing there with his eyebrows raised. Huh? Our viewership's down? Our ratings are historically the lowest they've been in the last 30 years? Nobody wants to watch a 3-point rec gym shootout with no competitiveness and no rivalries? What? That's where the NBA is right now. That's what we've gotten to. But yeah, that's it, man. And yeah. I've never been a big NBA fan, So this doesn't hurt me. What hurts me more is what's going on in Major League Baseball. And we'll get to that. Well, we'll get to that now. So Juan Soto, and after this, we'll get to college football and NFL. Okay, so Juan Soto $15 years, $765 million. Could be $800 million by the time he's done with escalators and incentives. He signs with the Mets. Big deals being made of. It's being made of the Mets outbidding the Yankees. It's the Mets getting Juan Soto. It's all these different factors. And I think I'll pose it as a question because I've done this in the past. Does Juan how do I phrase this? I don't want to be hyperbolic. Does Juan Soto to the Mets change much for me? Nope, absolutely not. It doesn't really change anything, actually. The amount of money, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to give to one guy, a lot of money to commit to a dude. But ultimately, the money factor, the overpay, that's too much, this guy's worth that, the comparisons, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist when Steve Cohen is the owner of the New York Mets, because money to him is no object. $1 billion or $750 million in the case of Juan Soto's financial commitment is a drop in the bucket. That's like me pulling out, I would say, like $500 from my bank account. You would kind of go, oh, and then go, oh, well, I mean, it'll come back eventually, right? It's a lot of money, but it's like, meh, I'll be fine. Same with him. So the whole overpay, it's too much. That doesn't exist. However, if I was an owner of a team and I had unlimited money, I would probably rather allocate those resources and that total amount of money and that 51 to 55 million a year into 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 other guys, as opposed to one other dude. The hype around Juan Soto came from when he was at such a young age and he's able to consistently perform at the highest level over the course of his first 6 years in the MLB. The first 3.5/4 with the Nationals, the 1.5 with the Padres, and then the 1 with the Yankees. What I'll say is this. Do I think Juan Soto changes the outlook for the rest of the league when he agrees to a deal with the Mets? And I think the answer is not at all. Baseball is a sport where you can assemble a literal super team. You can assemble 9 of the best players on one team and come up short in terms of winning a championship. By the way, last season, the Mets had the highest payroll in baseball. What was that? Yep, that's right. They had the highest payroll in baseball. And yet they struggled in certain parts of the season. They kind of had the underdog feature of them going into the playoffs. They were going and running off that tagline of the scrappy old Mets, when in fact, they had the highest payroll. And they came up short. So the point is, you can have the highest payroll, you can have a lot of the best players, and you can still come up short. Why? Because baseball is a complementary, full-blown prime example of a team sport. Juan Soto is on the Mets. The Mets are going to be better now than they were without Juan Soto. But Brett Beatty is going to get as many bats per game. Maybe not Brett Beatty, because I don't know. We'll see. I'll put it this way. Starling Marte is going to get as many at-bats per game as Juan Soto. Maybe not as many total in the season, because yes, guys at the top of the order get more at-bats, I get it. But the point still stands. There's going to be a bunch of games in the Mets season where Starling Marte is going to come up with multiple base runners on multiple times and have an opportunity to change the outcome of the game with his at-bats versus Juan Soto coming up early in the game, early in innings, with nobody on base, where his potential impact is actually going to be lower than some of the guys lower in the lineup. So the point is, does Juan Soto change everything in baseball? Does him go to the Mets make the Mets immediate World Series contenders? Does it make the Mets the biggest threat in the National League? This, and this. It doesn't do any of those things. No, it just doesn't. He is one dude. He's one dude. Offense in baseball is the most valuable thing you can have. He gets on base at a really high clip. Totally get it. That's super valuable. He has a bunch of slug in his game as well. Totally get it. Super valuable. Career OPS guy at or above 900 in most seasons. That's awesome. He can't run. He can't field. He has an average arm. He's a great hitter, but it's a massive overpay for a guy that I'd rather allocate those resources elsewhere. Overpay as a term doesn't exist with a guy like Steve Cohen because money is no object to him. So I don't really want to say that or frankly hear it from anybody else. Money doesn't exist in Steve Cohen's world. So Juan Soto was going to go there no matter what. But in terms of Soto going to the Mets and how that changes things, I think it changes things almost zero. Almost negligible. Because you know who's better than the Mets still and now? Maybe the Dodgers, maybe the Braves, maybe the Padres. Definitely the Orioles, definitely a handful of other teams across the league. One dude in baseball doesn't change your entire team. The exception to that rule would be somebody like Shohei Ohtani, who signed for less total money. Why? Because Ohtani can run. He can steal 50 bases. He just did. He can hit 50 homers. He just did. And he can pitch. He can pitch. He can go into a game and literally single-handedly win it. He can get on the mound. He can throw 7 shutout innings with 13 punch-outs, go to the plate 4 times and hit 2 homers, and nobody has to do anything else, and the team will win the game. That, to me, that type of game, which has existed previously in Ohtani's career, that game by itself is worth $500,000 to $1 million per game that's achieved, right? So now we sit here and Soto doesn't pitch. Soto can't run. Soto doesn't play a premier position and impacts the game absolute zero on the defensive side. Offensively, he's one of the best. But to act like or to contend that Juan Soto to the Mets changes the landscape of baseball, it was, first of all, pretty much expected. Second of all, makes the Mets better, but still leaves them with a ton of holes. And third of all, doesn't even make them a top 3, probably top 5 team in the National League, depending on how you look at it. They're a great team. They got a bunch of dudes, but who's going to start games for them next year? Who's going to play first base for them next year? Who's going to play third base for them next year? Like, there's so many holes in that team still. They're better. They're going to be contenders. They'll be solid. But if you're asking me right now, today, December 2024, after Soto to the Mets, give me Dodgers or Mets in 7. I'm going to go Dodgers in 5. We just saw it. Right now, you give me Padres or Mets, I'm going to go Padres in 6. You give me Braves or Mets, healthy, Braves in 6. Like, that's what I'm saying. So Soto doesn't change the entire landscape. The amount of money does, and it does change the market. But for me, Soto is a guy that needs the pieces around him in order for his full spectrum of impact to be realized. That's where I stand. So that's it. 15 years, $765 million. And there's escalators. Like I said, there's escalators where you can, like after his 5th year, there's an opt-out. So if he chooses to opt out or says, I'm electing to opt out, the Mets can void that opt-out by increasing the average annual value, average salary from $51 million, which is what it is now, to $55 million. Now, there's really no reason why Soto wouldn't do that unless he was bad. I don't know. Like I guess, you know, if he's bad, he wouldn't opt out because then he would just take the rest of the money and collect his checks. But if he's good, he could try to opt out and then the Mets would have to keep him or try to keep him and escalate the average annual. So it's an interesting contract. It is an overpay, but it doesn't matter because it's Steve Cohen. So moving on. Done with baseball, done with basketball, moving on to football. This is a ball show, guys. We know ball. College football scoreboard, playoff, and bracket. So, as we all know, Oregon won the Big Ten. Georgia beat Texas and won the SEC. Boise State beat UNLV. They won the Mountain West. And Arizona State beat Iowa State, winning the Big 12. And those are your 4 top seeds and first round buys. Oregon 1 seed, Georgia 2 seed, Boise State 3 seed, Arizona State 4 seed. So we have 4 on-campus first round college football playoff games coming in just under 2 weeks. You've got Texas hosting Clemson at home. Number 5 seed Texas hosting Clemson. 8 seed Ohio State hosting Tennessee on campus. You have 6 seed Penn State hosting SMU on campus. And lastly, you have 7 seed Notre Dame hosting 10 seed Indiana on campus. That's the spectrum of college football. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be entertaining. And there's a couple of things to touch on with the college football playoff. Number 1. Should Oregon be upset about their draw in the college football playoff? They win the Big Ten, they get the 1 seed, and then the way the bracket lines up is they play the winner between Tennessee and Ohio State. Many are arguing that is the best game in total with the 2 highest caliber teams. And no matter who wins that game, they're going to move on and have to play Oregon. And it's going to be a tough matchup for the Oregon Ducks. How about stop complaining already? And for Oregon and for Dan Lanning, you want to know what I guarantee? He's not saying that. He's saying, let's go win no matter what. How's that? Hey, Dan, there's an opportunity for you to play against Ohio State again, a team you already beat. Perfect. Let's go beat them again. Hey, Dan, there's an opportunity you play an SEC team in Tennessee at the Rose Bowl. Perfect. Let's beat them. Like, anybody complaining about the matchup and how favorable it is and how your path to winning is this and that? It's a loser mentality. Go win. Go win. Because I would argue, yeah, Oregon might have a tough matchup in the Rose Bowl. But if they win that game, they're either playing Arizona State, a 3-loss Clemson, or Texas, who's battered and bruised and has proven that they can't necessarily compete at the highest level against a physical opponent like they have against Georgia twice. So I'd argue Oregon might have a pretty favorable matchup. Like, there's no argument. Stop complaining already. Oh, what does Oregon get? They get the 1 seed and they're rewarded with the toughest matchup. Stop. Losers. Loser mentality. Dan Lanning's not saying that. Hasn't said that. Will continue not to say that because Dan Lanning is a tough SOB. Dan Lanning's not saying any of those things. He's not a loser. He doesn't look at it in that fashion. Oh, it's a tough draw. They already played Ohio State and beat them. And if they play Tennessee, they get an opportunity to play a team in the SEC that's traveling from the East Coast-ish over to the Rose Bowl. Like, it's not... Just stop complaining. It's insane. The other complaints that were coming out of the playoff. Alabama gets left out. SMU gets put in. Did SMU deserve to get in over Alabama? Or did Alabama deserve to get in over SMU? Here's the answer. SMU is in. Here's the secondary answer. Alabama lost 3 football games. They got blown apart by Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. They lost to an unranked Vanderbilt team. And they lost to Tennessee. It's not the committee's fault that Alabama got left out. In fact, it's actually Alabama's fault. It's the team's fault for losing 3 games. Because all Alabama had to do was beat Oklahoma, a 500 team, and they're in the playoff. And guess what? They didn't do that, so they don't get to get in the playoff. Like, it's not, oh, our schedule's tougher, and maybe we'll just schedule a bunch of nobodies so that we can go undefeated. Like, nope. SMU played in the ACC championship. They don't get penalized harshly, and they kept the game close. So guess what? They only have 2 losses, and they went to a conference championship, and they deserve to be in over Alabama. It's a pretty simple answer. I am an Alabama fan. Did Alabama get screwed out of a playoff spot? Coming from an Alabama fan? Nope. Actually, they didn't. They lost 3 games. They looked horrendous for most of the year. They looked overmatched in not just their 3 losses, but a couple of other games as well that they came out on top. They were incredibly inconsistent. They had no offensive consistent production from either facet, run or pass. Their defense got gashed against bad offensive metric teams in both Oregon and Vanderbilt. And just because their brand is what it is and they played in the SEC, as it turns out, that means nothing. It means nothing. Stop complaining. They lost 3 football games. They lost 3, 2 to unranked. Bad losses. Oh, but they beat Georgia. Okay, well, they beat Georgia at home. If you take away 2 drives, the first 2 offensive possessions for both teams in the early Georgia-Alabama matchup, take away the first 2 offensive possessions for each team, Alabama loses that game. They lost to Tennessee. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Oklahoma. They played like crap in 4 other games. They weren't a good football team, and somehow people are still complaining about it. SMU deserved it, earned it, and rightfully finds themselves in the college football playoff. The fact that Alabama was even in consideration, frankly, to me, is hysterical. It's the fact that everybody else was also mid this year that made it easier to consider them in the top 12. But if you gave Alabama that 12 seed, right? If SMU wins, the 12 seed is open, Alabama gets in, and they have to face Texas. Like, they get rolled. They get rolled. So I don't really know what you talk about there. It's not even a consideration. It's not. Oh, but they played in the SEC. Guess what? I don't care. Committee doesn't care. Country doesn't care. People are like, oh, well, the fact that everybody in the nation is celebrating Alabama not getting in shows that they were scared of them. No, it's because Alabama's always gotten the benefit of the doubt. And this year they didn't earn it. And people felt like, oh my God, they're still going to put them in over a 2-loss SMU team. And they didn't. And they didn't deserve to be there. So stop complaining. College football should be fun. All those first round games are on, well, there's one on December 20th, which is not this Friday, but of course next Friday. And then the other 3 games are slated throughout the day on Saturday the 21st. It should be fun, should be exciting. I think everyone's happy about the results, how it should be. And yeah, we'll get to this point where you've got the 4 other bowl games coming through on New Year's Eve and then New Year's Day. Again, it should be awesome. Should be awesome. Really excited for the college football playoff, and stop complaining about it already. It's not even a year. I haven't even started the college football playoff. Moving on, man. Moving on. NFL. So, start with Thursday Night Football. Lions, Packers. Lions beat the Packers 34-31. The Lions go for it on 4th down towards the end of the game when they just didn't need to. And Dan Campbell, is Mr. Risk Taker, Mr. Go for it. And it almost came back to bite him when Jared Goff literally fell down, executing the handoff at the end of the game on their 4th down attempt. Luckily, he got the handoff to Montgomery. They got the first down. They ran the clock down to nothing, and then they kicked the field goal and won by 3. My thing with Dan Campbell, I'll put it this way. Is Dan Campbell smart or reckless with his 4th down decisions? Every single 4th down decision he's made comes with context. But if you look at, for comparison, the 4th down decision he made against the Packers on Thursday night, and then you look at the NFC Championship last year, everyone says, well, fair enough. He lives by the sword. He dies by the sword. He follows his protocols. He does exactly what he's done all year to lead him to success. And you can respect that. I actually just can't respect it, because going forward on 4th down against the Packers was reckless. It was a reckless decision. Now it led to success. And in hindsight, you look at it and go, well, it got done, so who cares? But what if it didn't? What if Jared Goff falling down led to them fumbling or not getting the first down? Then what do? Oh, you do what happened last year in the NFC Championship against the 49ers, which was going for it excessively on 4th down, because you got to live by the sword and die by the sword, and it led to them losing that football game. If the Lions had kicked 2 or 3 different times in that NFC Championship, they probably walk away with a win and go to the Super Bowl. So is it reckless? Yes. Does it work sometimes? Yes. That doesn't mean it's the right decision. Just because it works doesn't mean it's the right decision. And ultimately, if the Lions want to make a deep postseason run, it's going to come to a point in the playoffs, in a crunch time situation, where Dan Campbell is just going to have to kick the field goal. He's going to have to punt. You can't go for it on 4th and 6 inside your own 30-yard line. You just can't do it. You just can't. You're going to have to play defense. You're going to have to take the 3 points. That's what championship caliber teams do. That's what the Chiefs have done all year. That's led them to success. And frankly, it's what led to the Lions losing in the NFC Championship last year. I get it during the regular season. I get that the games maybe aren't worth as much as a playoff game, but it's going to come down to a time in the postseason for Dan Campbell as a head coach where he's just going to have to step down from the pedestal a little bit that he's been on all year and in his entire coaching career about going forward on 4th. It's going to have to take a step back and realize 3 points is huge here. Punting the ball, flipping the field is huge here. We got a decent defense. We got a decent kicker, like all these different considerations. It's going to lead to their demise if they decide to go in that direction again. That's my humble opinion, but I guess we'll see. We'll see. Moving on to Sunday. Jaguars played the Titans in the Crap Bowl. Jags beat the Titans 10-6. Titans are obviously trash. Jaguars are also trash, is what it is. Dolphins hosted the Jets. Little AFC East action. Dolphins beat the Jets in overtime, 32-26. Tua's played lights out since he's come back from his concussion that he sustained. And the Dolphins are 6-7. And 9-7 will probably get you in a playoff spot. Oh, but who do the Dolphins have left to play? The Texans, the 49ers, the Browns, and the Jets. And I said 9-7. 9-8. They could beat the Texans, they could beat the Browns, and they just beat the Jets. The 49ers might be a tough-ish game, but the 49ers have scuffled repeatedly and consistently this year, and that game is in Miami. Dolphins went out, they're 10-7. It's a playoff spot. I don't know what to tell you. Falcons played the Vikings, beat them. Vikings beat the Falcons in Minnesota. The Vikings win 42-21. Sam Darnold, 22 of 28, 347, 5 passing touchdowns. The Falcons have scuffled. Obviously, Kirk Cousins has scuffled. The mismanagement, I think, of the Falcons is probably the storyline of that game in this season, where you sign Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins struggles despite having a ton of offensive weapons because he doesn't have the pass protection that's probably necessary in some cases. He's also old, probably got too big of a contract, too much guaranteed money. And then with that draft pick that they should have used to probably protect their quarterback that they signed to a giant contract with a bunch of guaranteed money, they used that pick on another quarterback. So then it draws the question and puts into the heads of everybody, including Kirk Cousins, oh, there's another option. I better play well, and I'm going to press a little bit harder, and in doing so, going to continue to make more mistakes. Falcons mismanaged this entire season. It's okay. Nobody expected the Falcons to go on and win the Super Bowl, despite whoever they picked that, ended up with a quarterback and who they took in the draft. But they could certainly be better than 6-7. And they actually started off pretty well and obviously have scuffled in the last month or two. On the flip side, the Vikings are 11-2. Sam Darnold has been dealing at quarterback. And if you take anything away from the NFL season in 2024, it is give quarterbacks time to develop and give quarterbacks the benefit of the doubt, because it turns out that circumstance, situation, location, team, city, coach, and GM has just as much to do with a quarterback's success as anything else. Sam Darnold changes locations, bounces around the league, ends up in a solid organization on a team with a ton of offensive weapons and a good defensive scheme to keep their teams into games, and Sam Darnold is nasty. Bryce Young, second year in the NFL, starts to develop. You give him a little bit of time. You lower your expectations out of this unrealistic realm. Bryce Young starts to play better. Russell Wilson goes to Denver. Everyone expects the world of him. The situation doesn't work out. The circumstances aren't great. He goes to Pittsburgh, changes situations, changes circumstances, and he's nasty. All these different teams, all these different quarterbacks, all these different situations and locations are the biggest takeaway for me. You got to give guys time to develop. You got to cool the jets a little bit, and you got to build a legitimate foundation and support system around a quarterback. Otherwise, he's not gonna be good, right? So for Sam Darnold, it's a good thing to see. I think a lot of people, it's unexpected, but a lot of people are looking back on it and going, well, you know what? He was like pretty respectable at USC, and he had great numbers in college, and he was a high draft pick. So I guess it's not that shocking. He just needed the right place, the right culture, and the right circumstance. And here we are with Sam Darnold having by far the best week of any quarterback. Well, actually, Josh Allen's was probably better, and we'll get to that. But 347 passing, 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's crazy. Saints went to New Jersey and played the Giants, beat them 14-11. Derek Carr's hurt. Saints season's over. The Panthers played the Eagles. All right. Panthers lose, Eagles win. Eagles beat them 22-16, but the Eagles were 12-point favorites in that game. And somehow, some way, the Eagles have won 7 or 8 in a row. They're 11-2. They win a football game in the NFL, and all anybody can seem to do inside and outside that organization is complain about what they're doing. And somehow it starts to leak out that there's issues, problems, butting of heads within the offense, despite having probably the best running back in the NFL at the moment, being 11-2. And to me, all these issues that for some reason continue to perpetuate in Philadelphia with the Eagles, for me, it's not a reflection on necessarily even maybe the fan base or the quarterback or certain players or this guy complaining that he's not getting the ball. Like, all this stuff for me goes back to the head coach. What is Nick Sirianni doing? What is he doing? Where is he? How are there dudes on the Eagles going around town, doing appearances on local radio stations and just openly talking about, well, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts aren't close anymore and they don't like each other? How is that getting out? How is that happening? How is AJ Brown unhappy to begin with? Why are the fans unhappy with the team winning 7 games in a row? Why, when they barely beat bad teams, in some cases, is Nick Sirianni like flexing? Or when his home fans are booing them for a bad performance, but they go on to win, Sirianni is the guy flexing on his own fans. Like, every problem that the Eagles have sustained so far, for me, it all points back to the cultural leadership of the head coach. Sirianni is just letting this team somehow break apart at the seams. Like, they have everything they need to go on a deep playoff run. Everything. Especially in today's day and age in the NFL, where you have to have a good run game on offense. Do they have a good run game? Oh, let me think. They have the best running back potentially in the NFL. They have a fantastic wide receiver tandem in both Devontae Smith and, of course, AJ Brown. They've got a reliable tight end target. They got an accurate enough quarterback who's physical and makes the right decisions for the most part. And they got a great defense. So what's the problem? Why is there always an issue in Philadelphia while Nick Sirianni is there? Why? It just all screams and points back to him, man. And I just don't get it. I don't get how there continues to be issues in Philadelphia with the Eagles. How? They're 11-2. They've won 7 in a row. Oh, there's a guy on the radio in Philly that comes out, one of the players on the team. Yeah, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts don't like each other. How? Like, why is that coming out? Where's the leadership? Where's the culture? What happened? I don't know, man. It's just weird. Just bad vibes from Philly right now. Bad vibes. Bad. Steelers hosted the Browns on Sunday. Steelers beat the Browns 27-14. Steelers are 10-3. Sheesh. Raiders went to Tampa Bay and played the Bucks. Bucks beat the Raiders 28-13. Baker Mayfield had a nice game, 295, 3 touchdowns. Seahawks go on the road to Arizona, play the Cardinals. Zach Charbonnet out of the backfield for the Seattle Seahawks, 22 carries for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cardinals, they've improved. They're getting better. They got Kyler Murray, they got Marvin Harrison, got James Conner. They're still a couple pieces away. Right? Still need to improve the run defense. Still need to protect Kyler Murray a little bit better. They're trending in the right direction, but they're still a piece or two away. So they need to go to the draft and figure some stuff out. We'll touch on this one here in a minute, the Bills-Rams game, but we'll go to 49ers and Bears. So 49ers beat the Bears 38-13. The Bears finished the first half of the game with 4 offensive yards. Caleb Williams finishes with 134 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns going to Rome Odunze. Team stats in total. So again, the Bears had 162 yards of total offense versus the 49ers 452 yards of total offense. Now, while the Bears, of course, have obviously forfeited this season, they're 0-6 on the road. They thought they had something, but of course they didn't. As it turns out, you can't polish a turd. You can't polish a turd. The Bears tried to take a shortcut. They drafted Caleb, they drafted Odunze, they traded for Keenan Allen, and they acquired DeAndre Swift. And then they said, let's make the playoffs. Oh boy, are they not going to make the playoffs. In fact, their head coach, their offensive play caller, and everybody involved on the coaching staff turned out to be completely incompetent. Their offensive line is terrible. Their coaching is horrendous. Their discipline is really bad. And they had 3 or 4 weird, fluky, inflatable wins in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And everybody thought they had solved all their issues. Like, do people know they won a game early on without scoring an offensive touchdown? Like, that's gonna come back to be problematic later on. And to go into a game against San Francisco, head coaches fired, offensive play callers fired, season seemingly down the drain, and to have 4 yards of total offense in an entire half of the game, it's going to take a full organizational revamp. The Bears tried to take a shortcut, and it ended up setting them back even more. Even more. I don't know what they thought was going to happen when they took a quarterback 1 and then a receiver 9, the guys that were buddies, traded for a regressing and aging Keenan Allen and a DeAndre Swift who was dispensed of from his previous team and didn't address any of the real organizational foundational problems. The coach was a disaster. The offensive play caller was a joke. The pass protection is horrendous. The defense is inconsistent, to say the least, and is going to continue to get worse when the offense is never on the field and can't get a first down. Like, it's a complementary sport. You need all the different facets to be good, to complement each other, to work in tandem. Otherwise, it's a disaster. How would you define a disaster? I would say 4-9 with the number 1 overall quarterback pick, a bunch of offensive transactions, and by the way, 0-6 on the road. And a coach fired, offensive play caller fired, all in the same season. Bears, woof. 49ers, decent bounce back, but they still have some issues, right? McCaffrey's gone. Now, as it turns out, they're now 3rd running back, and Guerrero might be out for a foreseeable just maybe a game or 2, but out. That would be McCaffrey on the IR, Jordan Mason on the IR, Guerrero out, and they play Thursday Night Football. It's like, bruh. Still think the 49ers need to just wrap it. And they're not going to go deep in the playoffs, so just wrap it. Fred Warner's battling an injury. He's hurt. I don't know. Chiefs beat the Chargers 19-17. The Chiefs, I don't want to spend any more time talking about them. They're not good. Like, Their defense is pretty good. Their defense is pretty good. Their offense isn't. Mahomes is playing a middle tier quarterback play this year. Not entirely his fault, I would say, necessarily. Just like, he's not, he's whatever. Like, he's playing fine, good enough to win. Just other teams seem to be just like when crunch time comes, or it's critical time to convert, the Chiefs always do it. The other team never does. It's kind of what it comes down to for the Chiefs. Once again, and continuously, perpetuatingly, winning by one possession, under 7 points, and have the lowest point differential of a team that's 12-1 in NFL history. One hopeful and potentially positive stat or thing that I saw today is the Chiefs are 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 games, despite winning all of them. Actually, they might have lost that one of those to Buffalo. But nevertheless, they're 0-7 against the spread or something in the last 7. And no team has ever won the Super Bowl while having a 6-game spread losing streak. Saw that from Adam Schefter, I believe. So maybe that's something to hold on to. I don't know. And then Monday Night Football, Bengals beat the Cowboys 27-20. But the last game to talk about here, okay, Rams and Bills. Rams and Bills. So the Bills go, obviously, East Coast to West Coast. They play the Rams. Rams win 44-42. Josh Allen has a superhero game. He throws for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns. He runs for 82 yards and another 3 touchdowns. He has a monster offensive game, and his team loses by 2. Now, the NFL is weird, and this game doesn't hold all the weight in the world. But what I will say is if the Bills are losing any games while scoring 42 points and getting that type of performance from Josh Allen, that's going to become an issue. And I'll go as far to say this. It's a narrative we push on this show time and time again. Are wins a quarterback stat? The answer is no. They're not a quarterback stat. What do you mean? The best quarterbacks go on to win. They have a tendency of winning football games and having success. How about I read you 2 stat lines of 2 different quarterbacks side by side from NFL Week 14, and you tell me which quarterback won and which quarterback lost. Quarterback A went 24 for 37, 210 passing yards, and 1 passing touchdown. He also rushed 4 times for 17 yards. That's quarterback A. Quarterback B threw 22 of 37, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns passing, and also ran 10 times for 82 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Which quarterback won and which quarterback lost? The quarterback that threw for 240 with 1 passing touchdown, or the quarterback that threw for 340, 3 passing touchdowns, had 3 rushing touchdowns, and accounted for in total 6 total TDs? Which quarterback won, which one lost? Because we all know the answer and we all know what I'm referring to. Mahomes was the first quarterback, Josh Allen was the second. Mahomes got the win, Josh Allen lost. Quarterback stats or wins are not a quarterback stat. They're just not. They're just not. They're not. They can't be. It's impossible to quantify winning and losing based on a quarterback. Because Josh Allen, my God, did he do everything it took to win against the Rams in Week 14. And yet he didn't. Why? Because he doesn't play defense. Because he doesn't play special teams. You get a blocked punt for a touchdown. You get a dynamic offense on the other side of the ball. His defense seems to be overmatched, and the Bills lose. Wins are not a quarterback stat. And anybody who uses them as a defining metric of evaluating quarterbacks and their success, you just don't know ball. You don't know ball. Because if it were wins and losses determine how good a quarterback is, then that last week, Mahomes was better than Josh Allen. When in fact, that's not true. And everyone knows it. So stop using it. Stop complaining. Josh Allen, by the way, on track to win MVP. On track to win MVP. Guy's dominating. So that's it, guys. That's all we got. Episode 106. It's in the books. Told you it would go a little bit longer than normal. Not necessarily an issue, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it and stuck around to the very end. Thank you guys for tuning in as usual. Episode 106 in the books of the We Know Ball podcast. Covered everything from college basketball, NBA, Major League Baseball, college football, NFL. It's the best sports show around, and hopefully you guys feel the same. If you did make it all the way to the end, please feel free to share. Feel free to rate the podcast on whatever outlet or channel you choose to indulge yourself, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, any of our social channels. Feel free to share any and every content that you see from us. Again, my Twitter handle at Ryan Knows Ball. Instagram and TikTok is at We Know Ball Sports. Check us out on YouTube. I mentioned it on YouTube. We got the different pieces of content, but we also have the full episodes on there as well. So if you want to go check it out on there, or that's your preferred platform, whatever the case is, check us out anywhere and everywhere you can. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We get into the heart of the football slate schedule season, and we approach the new year. It's been great. I appreciate anybody tuning in towards the very end of the show or any other episodes. This is your first episode. Thanks for being there to the end. Share it. Do everything you can. We're going to just send this thing to the moon and expand everybody's ball knowledge, because ultimately, like I said, if you know ball and then I know ball, that means we know ball. Talk to you guys later.
We know ball. First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City! It's over. Time to say it again, Boston. Anything's possible. Banner number 18 has been secured. The Celtics are NBA champions.
I mean, we know that we know ball around here.
Hail, hail, Michigan. They are the champions of college football 2023.
Start the party, Los Angeles. Your Dodgers have won the World Series.
It is a UConn coronation. The Huskies make history. Back-to-back national champions.
Well, we know ball, so